Yeah, that's essentially what I told, because Lorenzo was like, well, but like, so if there's a interrogation, do I play the interrogation? Do I have them roll first? And I'm like, well, I wrote there that the necessity for roll can be identified by anybody. So you just kind of keep going until you feel that you have to roll, I guess. Like it's
This takes us back to the pool game, doesn't it? Let me pull up another
yeah,
one, which I'm sure you'll remember.
there you go.
Okay, so if we
Yeah.
consider the one at the bottom is specific to the pool,
Hmm.
and the one at the top is more generic, and IIEE is not indicated because it can be distributed in all kinds of ways. Um,
Hmm.
so in your case, though, I think that either applies because this is something we talked a lot about in that class. Was first of all, a given arrowhead only addresses what it does. You're not front loading stuff for later arrows. Number one.
Yes.
And then number two, that let's not forget about the part that leads before the arrowhead, right?
Hmm.
We're playing, we're
Yep.
using situational authorities and stuff like that. We don't
Yep.
need to see an outcome yet. So what are we
Yep.
doing now? What is it like? What do we find out? What do we talk about? What happens? Who goes where?
Yep.
And that is actually play. It's not,
Yeah.
and so it's um, that's just the first arrow, but the others are all the same. I think you might remember. Um, I think it may have been a later version of the class. I don't remember, but I really broke down inspectors, Polaris, primetime adventures, and dialects for this.
It was with me. I have all the notes about
Yeah,
that.
excellent.
Yeah.
And so you may remember that in Polaris, we discovered that the vast majority of all those weird little rules,
It's similar to the pool. Yeah.
well, it's more than that. All the weird little things, but only if and all that stuff is really just clarifications of whether we're in the arrowhead or not for any of
Yeah.
these. And that's all.
Yeah.
And so it's really just a matter of not being confused and getting into an arrowhead when you don't need to.
Yes.
And if you
And
do, exactly about what? Um,
yeah, I actually like I specified this as like an and I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but again, you said you don't want to see text, but I specified this as a like an outright procedure that there is because I've been doing the token thing that you suggested with the pool so much with people with like I call it red die, blue die, but it's the same thing. That like now I wrote it in the game that like we are either in a situating phase or in a resolving phase,
right.
right? And we all move together into and during the situation phase, the keeper doesn't have any extra tasks other than I have more guys,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, I'm playing too.
Um,
Right.
in the resolving phase, the keeper has a kind of sort of a leadership role, and then depending on the role you pick, they might choose to do. They might have different powers, but in the situation phase, they don't have any special,
Right.
and they only have different guys to. And maybe the only thing is that they can set scenes, but even the scene setting is like kind of I haven't described yet if there's any explicit procedure for that. So it might be like maybe a player says I'm in the cloister and the
Right.
other
You may not
or
need
the
much constraint on that or formalization.
exactly like I haven't formalized that very much.
Yeah, it may not
So
need it at all. So with
um
that stated, the thing I'm driving at is, do the people playing, this is something to think about when you get there.
yeah.
Do the people playing understand that they can do stuff without being prompted? That they're,
It's very an important part of the game, and if
yeah,
they don't, I don't think the game is functioning. So
that's a big deal because one thing that
yeah.
has really shocked me recently, I mean, it shocks me a lot, is that when you are playing and there is no particular uh stepwise ordered sequence of you go, I go, sort of stuff. If that's not occurring, then what is it that you can do? Everyone says, "Oh, I control my player or I control my
Yeah,
character," but then you watch them when they play, and if they're not in an ordered combat, all they ever do is,
is answer the GM's questions.
yeah, is
Yeah,
basically, or say, or throw in, similar things like, do I see this? What do I notice? That kind of thing.
yeah,
And so they never really actually make their character walk and talk.
yeah,
And that is, I think, something that you would be attending to and discovering whether you need to, as a learning curve thing, whether you need to have some sort of learning curve about that, especially in an investigative game.
yeah. Because people are going to default to this is what I fear for the playtest is that people are going to default to their fucking Zilt play habits, especially when I tell them investigative game,
Right.
especially playing in fucking Italy. I had a non-session of Bison last week, which is the worst session of role playing that I've had in a
Wait,
year.
which game
Holy shit!
was that?
Well, I'm
Wait,
gonna
wait, wait,
say
wait. Back up,
Bison.
back up, back up. I didn't understand what you said. You
I had
had
a
a non-session
non-session
of
Bison,
the
Vason or
Swedish
whatever.
game.
Yes,
Okay, yes. Um,
but like we didn't even play it. Like it was just like asking the GM, like, can I do this? Can I do that? And then the GM sometimes calling for roles is so
I
fucking
consider
boring.
that game to be excruciating.
Yeah. Um,
So yes, I
now,
agree. That's what you're not doing here.
yeah,
So,
so I'm
mhm,
explicitly doing the opposite of that. So
right,
hopefully, I mean, I think Lorenzo can play. I've played with him, so I really like he understood. Like I put a lot of effort into the instructions for him as well, making this part specifically clear as I can,
yeah,
and I think he gets it. So um we'll
which is
see
great.
how much he can teach it to people,
Well,
but
that's the question. I mean, you may
yeah,
or may not have to. Number one, we're not going to find
no,
out until you get there.
yeah,
And when, and don't forget the concept of a learning curve. There may well be
right,
people who are more than happy to do exactly as you're talking about, but they simply are going to have to learn that the door is open for them to do it.
yeah.
And that will just might take a little bit of processing and play, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the learning curve,
I'm
right?
I'm thinking of genuinely bringing a fucking coin with a red side and a blue side to the game
Right, right.
because you're suggesting with a token. I broke like 3 or 4 Italians out of a fucking mind spell using a blue die and red die to explain to them when we were doing situational authority and when we were
Right.
doing outcome authority
Yeah.
without even explaining authorities. We're just
Right.
like,
Right.
yeah, and as soon as now I use the colors and the dice and the visual cue, they start getting it. So I'm
Good.
thinking of because
Just go ahead and
Italians
bring.
play like shit.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of just bringing a fucking large coin, like a massive coin with 2 sides, to the fucking convention, and then just flipping it.
That's
And
hilarious. Like this, like I think that the token idea sounds great. I think that the notion of just what you say, okay, when it's blue, talk like this,
yeah,
and just go with it. And I suspect you'll have a lot more success that way than, I mean, as you properly point out, there's no need for the coursework based breakdown with the terms.
yeah.
That's
And
not
then somebody's gonna say, "Oh my god, that's such a genius design idea," and I'm like,
necessary.
I half expect that to happen, but
Believe me,
anyways,
believe me.
going back to it,
Yeah, I feel the
yeah,
same way. It's like it's like good design and good communication. Those should
yeah,
not be regarded as a superior achievement, right?
yes. And just to tell you, I'm gonna get back to the game, right? But the convention next week, I'm actually organizing it,
Ah,
And I have decided, because I'm not the only one running games, and I want to try to promote good play as much as possible. I have devised a questionnaire. Sorry,
Oh,
I doodled over it at the end to detect how well people actually experienced agency. And I've spent like a month refining the questions.
interesting.
Uh, I really, really want to translate these and send them to you
Please, please. I am very
because
interested.
because they're kind of designed to pick certain things that tend to happen in Italy, so they're a bit culturally local. But not only I am measuring how well people felt the sense of agency, but also and in a ways that cannot be kind of mentally rewritten, right?
Right,
Um, I'm also I have trick questions that ask in the negative
right.
because I know how to write the shit. Like I did a I mean I have a master's degree. I mean I know you have as well. You have probably fucking two PhDs or something. But anyways, and then I have a thing at the beginning where I am also asking the player about his opinions in general about role playing games, where I detect like if like are you brain damaged essentially, and then I want to do some like cross analyses on like the because I have them in the same sheet. So
Oh yeah,
afterwards, I
I
want
am
to see.
actually looking forward to this quite a bit. It sounds like something I'd really like to see. So
Yeah, but
when you
I've
finish,
told no one that I want to do this apart from the other co-organizer, and I just told people there's going to be a questionnaire.
right.
Like I expect violence. Like
No, it you may what I'm really hoping is that they happily fill out the questionnaire and shrug and move on, and now you have all this great stuff.
yeah,
Um,
I'm hoping that as well. Yeah, but anyway, sorry. I
no,
will
that's good.
we'll talk about that some other time. Yeah,
Yeah. Let's to get back to this. So I want to clarify what I said earlier about not wanting text. I'm talking about for this
yeah,
conversation.
yes,
Right. So as we go on, and probably like maybe after you play, then some sort of more or less instructional sequence on paper would be useful. Um,
yes.
so yes, that would be good. And is there anything else that strikes you as something you want to go over now? I mean, in this early
There's
stage?
a flashback mechanic, but I
Ah,
guess I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but it's explicit because the idea is that as part of the mystery, there's so if you think of the Poirot story, right, or any story of that kind, there's a part of the story which happens before the crime is committed,
yeah.
and I have no interest in playing that in the present because
Yes,
like
yes. So
you
discovering
cannot
that,
prevent
yeah.
yeah, so
Well,
you cannot prevent the crime from being
film
committed,
makes a
right?
great deal of use of this, and literature does it too sometimes. So it's
Yeah.
perfectly
So
neat. It's yeah,
I actually thought if I wanted them to play from the start and then the scenes before the crime they cannot conflict or something like that. But then I'm like, no, I actually want to play after the crime. Then the
yeah,
crime is never played. It's
right,
described, but it's never played. And then they can call flashbacks in the past in like social situations with the suspects to essentially interrogate them in the past,
right,
right?
right.
Or like follow them around in the past and see what they are doing, which is
Yeah,
like what Poirot would have done anyways, right?
yes, yes.
So they are assumed to be competent detectives and a little bit curious, so there's no need to kind of justify this.
No,
And
not at all. It's just it's
if it's
establishing the.
very
I quite like it.
if it's very weird or very coincidental, and the keeper can just ask for a time roll, right, for a
Yeah,
roll on time resource
yeah,
to justify the flashback, and so they can do that. So this is I think I probably will put a limit on it, like how many of them you can call, but and
well, for now, you
the
just
keeper
try it
can
and see what
suggest
you
them.
like. Worry about
Yeah, for now I'm
maximizing the
just
stuff
trying
later.
to see it,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's possible. So that's the only kind of blue arrow mechanic that is explicit.
That's actually really
Um,
interesting. Okay,
yeah.
so that's kind of neat. And then I also was kind of interested in something that, okay, this is more of that literary talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had occasion to reread all the Sherlock Holmes a few
Mm-hmm.
times, and I have my own notions about Sherlock Holmes
Mm-hmm.
that are not, to my knowledge, anywhere else. I mean, maybe I'm just repeating somebody somewhere, but at least independently, I have come up with the idea, especially too because I've now read a lot of the contemporary fiction, other detective fiction at that time. And I'm of the opinion that Holmes was actually initially a parody.
Interesting. I haven't thought of it. But
That that not that the the mysteries were at least of interest, especially some of the early ones are kind of cool, the
yeah.
scary Mormons and stuff like that. But the deal here is that him as a deductive, brilliant figure, it's ass. His deductions don't work.
Yeah, it's always he's always using these like they're not deductions first of all,
No, they're not.
they're abductions.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're
they're
abductions.
exactly.
He's like using guesswork, and then like magically the guesswork is right. Yeah, I mean, I
Exactly.
fucking
And
I like reading it. It's
right.
entertaining, but I fucking hate it as a detective story.
Right. Well, that's my
Like,
point, is that I think it's actually a comedic version,
yeah,
and that the trouble is that Doyle got trapped by his fan base who didn't get the joke.
mm,
And that's
right,
and I do recognize, I mean, it's well known that he got very tired of the character, and it might just have been
mm,
repetition, but it may also have been that not getting the joke is irritating, and you have to keep, repeating the joke as and everybody's talking about it. I mean, for example, I've always hated that scientists will put Holmes' quote on their doors. That one
right.
about eliminate the impossible and whatever
Oh
remains
yeah,
will
yeah,
become
yeah.
the.
Holy shit, man! No,
And you're like, that's the
you're
least
you're
scientific
dressing up
thing.
and
It's the least
yeah, yeah,
scientific thing I've ever seen. The whole point of
yeah. It's
science is that we have lots of probable things, right? Lots of probable things. And
yeah,
some of
man.
them
Like
aren't
I
true.
agree with you.
And so it's really, I look at that and I'm like, God damn it, that's the wrongest thing I've ever seen. You have it on your door. And so the issue here is that is what when I read the Holmes stories, do you know what I find to be the structurally and plot wise the most enjoyable thing about them? Their
What?
action. When they
Yeah, yeah,
go
yeah. Fair
into
enough.
action
Yeah,
and have fights, they're
yeah,
actually extremely enjoyable. They're much more fun as adventure and
yeah,
basically cop ish stuff, chases or, struggles on the staircases and stuff like that. They're much more
yeah.
fun as that than they are as anything else.